Look at her face, he whispered to the guy next to him, just loud enough to carry. Guess they'll let anyone in uniform these days. Who'd be scared of a soldier with scars like that? Heads turned. Some of the younger recruits chuckled nervously, unsure if they should laugh. Others looked away, ashamed but too timid to speak. At the center of it all stood Captain Maya Lane. She didn't flinch. She didn't answer back. Her eyes remained steady, calm, though the jagged scars along her jawline and temple caught the fluorescent light of the hall, making them impossible to ignore. She'd been through this before: mockery, stares, whispered comments. But this was different. This was her unit, her responsibility. And this recruit, this young man with too much arrogance and too little wisdom, had just turned training into a circus. The room went silent when the sound of boots striking the floor filled the air. General Robert Keaton entered. A legend in his own right, the kind of leader whose name carried weight far beyond the base. Every recruit straightened, shoulders back, eyes forward. But the general wasn't looking at them. His eyes went directly to Captain Lane. Then, slowly, he shifted his gaze to the recruit who had spoken. "You think scars make someone less of a soldier, son?" The general's voice rumbled like distant thunder. The recruit swallowed hard, realizing too late that his words had reached ears far beyond what he intended. Keaton took a step closer, his gaze unyielding. Then he looked back at Captain Lane, his expression softening just slightly. "Tell me, Captain," the general said. "What's your call sign?" The room froze. Lane hesitated for only a heartbeat, then answered in a voice that was steady, even proud. "Phoenix, sir." The word hung in the air like electricity, and in that instant, the recruit's face drained of color. Years earlier, before the scars, Maya Lane had been like many young officers, driven, disciplined, with a fire in her eyes that refused to dim. She believed in service, in sacrifice, in something bigger than herself. Her call sign, Phoenix, hadn't been given to her because of the scars. It had been earned in Afghanistan, on a night when everything seemed lost. She and her team had been pinned down in a valley, ambushed on all sides. Smoke, gunfire, chaos. The kind of scene that later finds its way into books and documentaries. But in that moment, there were no words, no legends. Just survival. A transport vehicle had been hit, flames licking at its sides, ammunition inside ready to detonate. And in the chaos, a young private was trapped, his leg pinned beneath twisted metal. Everyone shouted that it was too late. The fire was too strong. The vehicle was seconds from exploding. But Maya didn't listen. She ran straight into the flames. The heat was blinding, unbearable. The skin on her face seared as she pulled at the wreckage with everything she had. Somehow, impossibly, she freed the private and dragged him out just as the vehicle went up in a fireball behind them. The blast knocked them both to the ground. She survived, but not unchanged. The scars would never leave her, etched into her skin as a permanent reminder of that night. But so was the private. Alive because of her. From that day forward, she was Phoenix, the one who had walked through fire and risen from it. The recruits didn't know this story, at least not in detail, but they all knew the weight of a call sign. Call signs weren't nicknames. They weren't chosen for fun. They were earned in moments that tested the very limits of who you were. The recruit who had mocked her shifted uneasily, his arrogance dissolving. He had thought her scars were marks of weakness. Now he realized they were proof of survival. Proof of courage he couldn't even fathom. General Keaton let the silence stretch, each second hammering the truth deeper. Then he spoke, not to Maya this time, but to the room. "Phoenix saved lives when most of us would have given up," he said. "Those scars you see? They're not flaws. They're medals etched in skin. You don't mock them, you honor them." The hall was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. The recruit's face turned crimson. He opened his mouth, perhaps to apologize, but no words came. Captain Lane didn't need them. She wasn't interested in apologies born of shame. What mattered was that he, and everyone else, understood. Training continued, but something had shifted. Recruits who once kept their distance now gravitated toward her. They asked questions, not about her scars, but about leadership, about resilience, about what it meant to keep going when everything in you wanted to stop. One night, weeks later, that same recruit, whose name was Evan Parker, approached her quietly. He wasn't the cocky kid anymore. His voice was low, hesitant. "Ma'am," he began, "I wanted to thank you. Not just for earlier, but for everything. I didn't understand before. My little sister, she has a scar too. From an accident. And I guess I've always felt embarrassed for her. Tried to cover it up. But seeing you, it's different now. Maya looked at him, really looked. For the first time, she saw not the arrogant boy from that day, but a young man learning to see the world differently. She placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and firm. Then let her know she never needs to hide, Maya said softly. Scars don't take away from who we are. Sometimes, they show the best of us. Months passed, and recruits graduated into soldiers. But the story of Phoenix lingered, whispered among them like a legend. Not because of the fire, not even because of the scars, but because of the way she carried them, with quiet dignity, without bitterness. And Evan Parker became one of her fiercest advocates. In time, he would write home to his sister, telling her about a captain named Phoenix who showed him that scars weren't something to be ashamed of. That story would change more than just a training hall. It would ripple outward, reaching people who'd never set foot on a base, never worn a uniform, but who needed to know that survival, whatever form it takes, is never something to be mocked. The recruits never laughed at her scars again. Instead, they saw what General Keaton saw, what the battlefield had already proven. That sometimes the greatest strength isn't in the medals you wear, but in the scars you carry. And for Captain Maya Lane, for Phoenix, that was enough.